program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my awesome big brother.
Yeah, my favorite role. Love doing it. How you doing?
I'm well.
Good. Great to be here with you again.
Back with you.
Yeah. Especially after this kind of boring Super Bowl and, and in spite of the couple of people who seem to like it, what little I saw of the halftime show. Is it me, or am I just getting old, or is this getting lamer and lamer?
Of course you're getting old. Yeah. I mean, Maroon 5 is classic rock now.
Oh, that just hurts me on so many levels.
I know.
So, but before we get too much into the hurt, just tell people how, especially those of you who are listening,
yes, if
glad
you
that you're here.
On the radio with us in South Florida, you're listening to either 95.3 FM or 1470 AM, or if you're watching us live on Facebook, hello.
Hey, thanks for
joining.
joining.
For joining us. Please hit that like button and share as often as you can. And feel free to call in. Write down this number, 888-565-1470.
Yes, indeed.
Call in, join the conversation. Or you can also hit the little send email tab on the Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers Facebook page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so join the discussion, join the conversation, ask questions, whatever. If you're lonely, you just need something to do, go ahead, come on, we're here.
We don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, that's true, unfortunately, yet.
Yeah, maybe we're trying to get an hour, see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to do that sooner rather than later, so we shall see.
So since we've been doing this for about the past year and a half, time is certainly flying by fast.
It's really gone by.
Yeah. If anyone's joining us for the first time, maybe some of our PBSC students are tuning in.
Yeah, glad you do.
We hope so.
Yes, indeed. We let you out early, so you better.
We're going to have to start doing the secret word thing again.
Right.
But since we've been doing this show, the de facto theme just emerged as men's role in sexual health, especially men's role in preventing sexual abuse.
Yeah, and that was really,
assault.
Was really kind of that, I think, one of that first, real declarations that we kind of made, and again, there's people trying to counter or join, whatever it is, but really sort of along with, I consider us more sort of an adjunct to the Me Too and a lot of these other kind of movements, that we really need to look at it from the standpoint of male responsibility.
Right. What's the hashtag? Stop it?
Stop it. Yeah, it should be that simple. Stop it.
Hashtag stop it.
Right. Again, part of our point being that women do not prevent sexual abuse. Women can only defend themselves from it. Men have to stop it.
But we're still raising girls with all of this nonsense about, rules for going out. Don't leave your drink unattended.
Right,
like
exactly.
We don't raise boys to not...
Don't put a drug in somebody's drink.
Right. Don't club a woman on the head and drag her back to the cave.
Right. And again, on that exact point, actually on both of your exact points, the fact that since the time of sticks and caves, all we've changed was the drug.
Yeah, really.
Right?
It's
The
just
behavior has
more
remained the same.
Yeah.
So we've gone from a club over the head to ketamine or GHB.
Roof is still around?
Yeah, they're still around, but probably even more GHB. But it doesn't really matter. The stick has changed. The behavior has not.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's been more and more responsibility and burden put on women. Right? And it's really ridiculous if you take a step back and think about it. You're basically holding victims responsible for their victimization.
Right. And while we're at it, we're blaming the club.
On top of that,
right? Like, get rid of all the roofies, and what? Date rape will just disappear?
Well, it's a combination of ridiculous things. Well, maybe we should ban alcohol.
Yeah, right.
Right? Or just make the drugs illegal. And then, of course, we know, how many times does it come up that it really all comes down to what the woman is wearing.
Oh.
So if women would just learn to dress more modestly.
And not tease men all the time.
That's right.
But that was a real thing, wasn't it? That missile silo thing
Mm-hmm.
where a woman was reassigned
Yep.
because her sexiness was too much of a distraction to her male counterpoint.
And what gets me about that, and there was another case in a
counterpart.
civilian case, and what really kind of gets me about that is that we not only allow it, but it's been sanctioned legally. Because not only with that, but you remember the woman who she worked, she was a dental hygienist. She worked for this dentist who was very Christian, very married, and, with all of his obsessive and repressed stuff that came along with that.
Yeah.
But he fired her and told her it was because
she was too
attractive and he didn't trust himself.
It was here,
She
right?
sued, I think so. She sued for wrongful termination, and the court upheld the dentist.
That he was allowed to
That
fire
he was
her
allowed to fire her
Yes.
because he was attracted to her.
because of her feminine wiles.
Yeah. Now, and even this afternoon, even, thinking about kind of stuff like that, I do have to say this is the stuff that does bring me back into understanding this idea that's been bandied about, I think, also ineffectively and often incorrectly, but that when people talk about male privilege.
Yeah.
Right?
We were talking about that last week, right?
Yeah.
It's probably more about entitlement.
Yeah, exactly. But in a sense, I think where there is the privilege is the fact that a court, a judge, who also has a penis, right? Basically legally
presumably.
sanctioned and said it's an idea that is valid.
What's that?
Because a guy cannot control himself. And again, talk about centuries-old biases, but because it's natural for guys not to be able to control himself, he can fire her.
Well,
This is codified now.
but in Florida, a guy can still get arrested for having a visible erection, even if clothed.
And even if it's fake.
Right.
Yeah.
So supposedly out of our control, but you better control it or you'll get a ticket.
Right. I even heard, and again, if I needed any more reasons to dislike this person, but even hearing some, idiots like Drew Pinsky saying things, justifying this idea that that's natural masculinity. Men can't control themselves.
Really?
Yeah, really, exactly. That's the only response to that.
He said that?
Yes.
What an idiot.
Yes. And I kind of reread that in a dear friend of ours, an article that she wrote on masculinity, Laura Riskel. And this is back in 2002, I believe.
That piece you're talking
Go out
about.
and get yourself some.
Go get a piece.
Or go get a piece, son. Right?
That was horrible.
Yeah.
That was...
Well, it was a brilliant article.
Yeah,
the
really,
idea, what she was writing about was
prompted
horrible.
the article. It was
Yeah.
a brilliant article.
Yeah.
But what prompted it was one of those Mardi Gras parties, I think, in Seattle, where a woman was basically gang groped.
Oh, yeah, this
and had
became
her
world
clothes
famous.
torn off her. And
Held up by groups
fingers
of
shoved
men.
in her every hole.
Yes.
And the most disturbing part of the picture was because, to protect her anonymity, they blurred out her face. So
Right.
all you saw was like gaping eyes and a screaming mouth, and just made it that much more disturbing. The guys, like 2 or 3 guys out, videotaped.
Yep.
That was the worst part about it. And it goes back to that same, that horrible case that the Jodie Foster movie was
The Accused.
based on.
Right.
Where the peanut gallery.
That's right.
The behavior itself is not sick enough. The spectators who are cheering it on and,
Right.
and getting turned on and,
Right.
and
Which good. I mean, I was really kind of pleased legally that ended up setting a precedent, because that also was the first time that guys
spectators were charged.
charged.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was one guy in a crowded back room in a bar. One guy who finally said, "No, this
Right.
is," and went and called the police.
Right. Well, again, the same kind of thing. Look at what happened in, 2000, the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York, where It was just a constant assault on women. And, again, a very, very powerful scene from the documentary Dream World, and showing how, again, with music video, the documentary, we show it in our sexuality classes.
They got to update that. It's so old by now.
Well, but it's...
goes back to the roots of MTV.
Well, they've updated a couple of times, but it's still about 10 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
But, I mean, the themes are still alive and well.
Absolutely. The industry has not changed. It's still an industry based on the adolescent male entitled sexual fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, people don't really even catch on that a music video is a commercial to go buy music.
Right.
Nobody's buying records or CDs anymore, but...
Well, but see, this is where...
download the album.
And this is where we're kind of old stuff does sort of come in, because I really do understand it. And... that point, even with that documentary, that especially, it's not just men learning all this stuff. And again, how many guys use porn as a sort of educational material. And the more, especially from younger ages, and the more they see it, it's the same message incessantly over and over and over and over again. No other perspective, no other opinion is even presented. So that becomes the script that not only men start working from, but women as well.
Yeah.
How many women, how many girls are buying into this stuff, this script?
Another sex ed activity that hasn't changed in 30 years. The list of when is it okay to force sex on a date, and how many women are checking off.
I mean, that should be such an easy...
Oh, if you spent a lot of money on me.
That should be an easy quiz.
Right? If we had sex before. But...
How about never?
Especially kids.
Yeah.
They don't get it till they get to the bottom of the page and read. It's never acceptable to force sex on a date.
Right.
And using the words force and sex in the same sentence is a description of rape.
Yes.
Then they go, right? And look at all the ones they checked yes to above it on the page.
Yeah.
The same old cliches, the same old spending money thing.
Yep.
Like...
And it hasn't changed. And a lot of the kids we have in classes now, we've had their parents.
Yeah.
And there's consistency there.
It sure is. But for years we've told guys, even if you're dating a sex worker, she still has the right to enjoy herself, to have pleasure, and to say no.
And and I got news for you. And guys need to also get over the fact that even if you're in the middle of doing something and somebody changes their mind, say, I really don't want to be doing that, they have that right.
And ignoring
at
that
any time
is a crime.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I think this, again, as we've been going into these conversations and discussions about masculinity, and as they've been taking place all around the country, we hear a lot, and it's almost become a buzzword, this idea of toxic masculinity. And I do actually think that some of the backlash against that is warranted. Because I do think that there is a lot of that is put out there just to sort of vilify masculinity, to basically blame men for everything, to say masculinity is a toxic script and it's all bad. And the reality is, first of all, and we've talked about this before, that a lot of people that say these kinds of things really do want to believe that gender is a complete social construct.
Right.
It's not biological. There's no sort of inherent pattern that we come into the world with.
Really?
and sorry, as much of gender that is socially constructed, it is not all socially constructed.
No, it starts with biological.
Right.
Starts with different brains.
Well, but see, that's a point that people don't want to accept. Again, we got our truthiness versus our truth going on with this. That so much is put out there saying that's a myth. Our brains are really more identical, and people say we're more identical at birth.
What?
Well, that says, first of all, that says nothing.
Yeah,
right?
Because we haven't started learning and growing neural connections
exactly. We haven't really developed a brain yet. Right? So
how could anybody argue that we just spend most of our time in half our brain?
Well,
I mean Y chromosome.
Well, but I wouldn't even say it's half our brain. I mean, we do have different brain structures and functions.
And the activity, the traffic
That's
between
right.
the two hemispheres.
That's right. And some of the differences...
We got an old dirt road compared to women's 8-lane superhighways.
Right. We have bigger area, but women have more cells.
Yeah.
Right?
So that means more activity.
And is actually what I find very interesting in terms of brain differences is there's more variability between heterosexual men's brains than there are compared to anybody else. So like if you take a heterosexual man, compare him to a woman, there are more similarities in structure.
Right.
Although, again, the brain of the man is bigger, but there are a greater number of cells in a woman's brain. But you compare to an identified gay man or a trans man, there are certainly
more like
differences.
Girl brains?
No, actually, still more like male brains. But when you look across men just in general, you find more sort of interspecies variability among men than you do comparing men to anybody else.
Huh.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know what to make of that yet. But I just find that an interesting concept. But yeah, this idea of being, I think having identical brains is just as erroneous as having sex-typed brains. We're different. There are a lot of differences. And in spite of the fact, just having said that, in spite of the fact that other data does show that there is a like 67 to 70% reliability rating of just looking at brains and brain functions and correctly identifying the gender.
Huh. Okay.
Right? That's a lot more than chance. So, you know, again, is it perfect? No. But there's no question that we have these biological and physiological differences.
Yeah.
So I don't know when it became not okay to say that we're different. Right? But I do
PC
think it's
principle.
nothing more than PC nonsense to say our brains are identical, because they're not.
When they hired PC Principal.
That's right.
It's all been downhill.
That's right. You know, and even when we talk and we have discussions about masculinity, even again, this sort of scepter of toxic masculinity, what are we really talking about? Right? And I think whenever we've even had any discussions about defining masculinity, we globally, not we, you and I, but the way we generally look at masculinity, it's about actions, not ways of being.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all focused on doing.
You know, I think there's an insinuation that it's, you know, the boorishness, the selfishness, the aggression, the taking.
Well, you know, and again, having said that, and these are often identified as negative aspects of masculinity. I don't really know that I've ever heard anybody talking about or even naming positive aspects of masculinity. It's like that doesn't exist.
It's usually about control, right? Being in control, being, you know, the things that we respect in leaders. That whole, what's that psychological gender thing, like penis envy. That's what it is. That if a woman's in that position, you know, if a man's in that position, he's respected and looked up to. If it's a woman, it's like, she just wants a penis.
Right.
Or just trying to be a man.
Sure. Or that double standard that a guy is assertive and a woman is a bitch.
Yeah.
Right? We get that double, that saying, again, we have no shortage of double standards with any of this stuff. But, you know, even looking at that quality of assertiveness. Now, can that be a detriment? Can that be a negative quality?
No, we teach people that's a positive attribute if it's not aggressive.
Right.
People have to understand the
Exactly.
difference.
Right. And if we can learn to teach guys how to assert themselves without having to try to gain control.
Right.
Right. And I think that's really where we've been missing the boat. Right? It's all just criticism, and a lot of the criticism is really PC. Right? I don't think it's all valid. Right? And again, I'm you know, I kind of feel like I'm sounding like one of those guys that I don't like listening to, because I mean that's not my perspective. But you know, in sort of trying to be fair and trying to be logical and rational and try to understand things so we can do something about it. We got to get away from all this sort of the inflammatory rhetoric and the constant insults and just being off the mark, whining and crying and just being bratty about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? Let's be adult about it. Right? Let's draw those lines. Let's talk about how to raise good men. Right? And I like everybody. I saw once a distinction between good men, trying to be good men, compared to being real men.
Well, aside from the stereotypes we were just talking about, what else? What's the difference? What's a real man?
Well, I think a real man, again, that whole thing. I mean,
against all the opposite of all those myths. Right?
Well, I mean, no, I
a
would
real
say,
man takes what he wants and doesn't
yes,
care about
the real man is the myth.
feelings.
The real man is the collection of myths.
Yeah.
The real man is the set of standards and expectations that men and boys are supposed to try to live up to.
That's crap.
Of course it is.
We need
so
a message
instead of
that real men are responsible and
or that's a distinction I like. That so forget about all this. What does a real man do? No. What does it mean to be a good man?
Yeah.
You know, and what are we teaching?
But it's not asking much more than to just have a conscience, to care about somebody else. Last week we were talking about this sexual narcissism. That guys get an erection and all of a sudden their sense of compassion is gone.
Right.
They could care less about their partner's pleasure. They're just overinflated sense of their own prowess. They turn into God's gift to women, or so they think.
Right.
So
okay.
how much is it to ask to just care about the person you're with?
Well, I mean, again, in and of itself, that is kind of asking a lot for people who are kind of taught to be inconsiderate.
There was that listserv thread in one of our professional circles about the Madonna whore dilemma, this old Freudian idea that a lot of men see the two kinds of women.
Like very Tony Soprano.
Right? Well, yeah. That's someone was asking for a patient was looking for a book, and I was tempted to reply, forget about any books, just watch some Sopranos reruns, right? And there was some debate back and forth about whether or not it's still a thing, and you know, it's not often that there's conservative thoughts that come across this liberal brain, but I think it's still very much a thing.
Oh, sure.
I see these guys all the time who just see that, you know, the woman that you're supposed to be in a relationship with is a good girl, and after the honeymoon phase, and if you get married and have kids, then she turns into this holy virgin mother figure.
Well, sure. That's the mouth that kisses your kids goodnight, right?
That's why you need a girlfriend downtown to do all the dirty things that your wife can't do anymore because she's no longer a sexual object.
Yeah, so I agree. That's still very alive and well. And not only in these stereotypic ways that we tend to see that, and in the older kind of ways. I see a lot of that. It takes a slightly different form, but I think I see a lot of that in millennials too, and in a lot of our students and young people. It may be not quite spelled out in the way that you described, but there is this element that I see of, you know, at this point in my life, I'm just having fun. I'm just doing that, and there's this real sense of there's a pool that I'm choosing from to just kind of be where I am right now. Later on, when I get serious about a relationship, I'll be kind of picking from a different pool. Right?
But
so there's still a double standard.
If you look at like all the wives on The Sopranos, there's this denial. They all know their husbands are fooling around. They all just stay in denial of it. None of them could fool around because, you know, that's a statement on the guy. So the wife and the boyfriend will get killed.
Right.
But millennial women just wouldn't, they're not that, they wouldn't stay in that denial.
No. There's other denials they would stay in. But I agree, they wouldn't stay in that denial.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't care. I mean, no matter how much things seem to change, we're really not much different. You know, really the things that change the most are the words, not the actions, not the behaviors.
Well, don't you think things are really changing in a big way after 2018 and this genie that'll never be put back in the bottle?
Some things are, yeah, absolutely. And again, some issues have been forced. And I think those,
Probably
I think they
a good
can't go
thing.
back into the bottle.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. It's about time.
Yeah.
Right? But other things are sort of still deeply entrenched. So again, the work is still way more ahead of us than it is either here or behind us. But again, it really is about preparing. How are we going to be raising men? How are we? And again, I think we ourselves even talk a lot about kind of the problems with it, but what can we actually do? What are the answers to the dilemma? Right? I don't think there's any question that this is a dilemma and it is an issue.
Right.
But what are we really going to do about it? I mean, it's easy to say raising better men, but what does that look like?
Parent training.
Okay, to include what?
Sex ed.
Right.
Talking to young men from young ages.
Okay,
About,
all right.
Sexual health and responsibility.
But how about empathy?
Yeah.
How about self-awareness?
Mm-hmm.
How about frustration tolerance?
Accepting
interpersonal skills.
Right, yeah, definitely. There should be relationship education.
Yeah.
And teaching people just how to interact and accept no with grace and not as a personal insult.
Right.
Same thing with couples and family relationships and work relationships.
Right. And there is also a rich area of where people do conflate entitlement with privilege. Because a lot of that attitude is really about entitlement.
Yeah.
Right? The stuff that people talk with privilege, I think the actual real privilege stuff, we really don't have anything to do with. You know, I mean, when I look at, just to use an example, because I was talking about this earlier today too, you know, even the concept of white privilege. Right? I think there's something to, and again, compared to other friends of mine that we've had these conversations with, that when I see a cop in my rearview mirror, I am worried about getting a ticket. Mm-hmm. We have friends that if they see a cop in their rearview mirror, they're worried about getting shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can refer to that as privilege in that sense.
You always bring up these deep points when we get to 2-minute warning and have to start wrapping up the show.
Well, because I want people to tune in next week. It's sort of it's a new version of The Perils of Pauline, the old serials. Stay tuned.
You're much older than me. I want to give a plug to for any professionals, therapists and medical professionals who may be watching or listening to the show, to please go and check out modernsextherapyinstitutes.com. My brilliant partner, Dr. Rachel Needle from West Palm Beach, and I have put together a world-class faculty, including this man right here, and it's all kinds of live and webinar and asynchronous training available.
And phone number real quick.
561-809-1080.
And if anybody's interested in counseling or therapy, they can also reach it in that number as well.
Yes, and Freddie's been running the scroll there.
Thank
so we will thank you all for joining us once again and ask you to please join us next Monday and every Monday at 9 for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
And please like, share, and follow us on Facebook. Have a great week. Good night.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.